Wyoming Territory, April 1883. It was just past dawn when Weston Grady stepped into his barn and found a pregnant woman curled up beneath a pile of canvas tarps, a rusted pitchfork clutched in one hand, her wide eyes locked on his. He froze. Sunlight cut through the slats above her, catching the dust in the air. She did not move. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said, voice low, hands open at his sides. "You are in my barn, though." She didn't say anything, not right away. Her lip quivered. Her cheeks were windburned, her dress torn near the hem, boots caked with dried mud. She looked like she had not slept in days. "Please," she whispered, a hand resting protectively over the curve of her belly. "I will leave, just let me rest a little longer." Weston took a step forward, slow and careful. He could see now she was not just pregnant, she was close. 8 months, maybe more. "Lady, I do not think you are going anywhere." Her shoulders shook and she looked down at her hands. "I did not know where else to go." He crouched a few feet from her. "Name's Weston Grady. This is my land." Her eyes lifted, unsure. "I am not asking who you are just yet," he said gently, "but I got a warm stove and clean blankets in that house right there. You stay out here. You and that baby might not make it through tonight." She blinked fast, and he saw the moment her pride gave way to exhaustion. "I am Naomi Vance," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I ran." Weston nodded once. "All right, Naomi. Let's get you out of the cold." The house was simple but clean. One main room, a small bedroom off to the side, a wood-burning stove that was already warming the place. Weston helped her into the rocking chair near the fire, then went to fetch a blanket. She settled into it with a soft sigh, too tired to fight anymore. "You want to tell me who you ran from?" he asked as he set a tin cup of water in her hands. Naomi hesitated. "My husband died last winter. He was not a good man. His brother tried to claim me soon after. Said the baby was his to raise. I did not want that. I packed what I could left in the night. Been walking near a week." Weston's jaw tightened. "You should have never had to do that alone." She looked down. "I thought I could make it to Cheyenne, find a midwife. Maybe work in a laundry or kitchen." "You are lucky you made it here," he said. "Storm's coming tonight." She looked up at him then, really looked. His eyes were kind but firm. He had lines around his mouth that said he had seen more than his share of trouble, but none of it had turned him bitter. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. He gave a quick shrug. "Because you need help." Naomi watched him move around the room, lighting another lamp, checking the fire. He had a quiet way about him, not hurried, not loud, just steady. She had not known steady for a long time. By the third day, the storm hit. Snow piled thick outside the windows and the wind howled across the plains. Naomi moved slower now, her back aching, feet swollen. Weston cooked beans and bacon, made her tea from dried peppermint leaves, and never once asked her to leave. "You got family?" she asked him once, watching him chop wood outside through the frosted glass. He came in, shaking snow from his shoulders. "Not anymore. Folks died in a fire back in Missouri. I came west after that, built this place with my own hands." She nodded. "You live here alone." "I do now." "You ever think about leaving?" He looked at her, something unreadable in his gaze. "Not until lately." Naomi's breath caught and she looked away, flustered. "I am sorry, that was forward." Weston stepped closer. "It is all right." That night, Naomi woke with a start. Her belly cramped hard then again. She gripped the edge of the bed and gasped. "Weston," she called, her voice thin. He was in the room in seconds, lantern in hand. "What is it?" "It is time," she whispered. "The baby is coming." The hours that followed were a blur of sweat and pain. Weston boiled water, held her hand, wiped her brow. He had never delivered a baby before, but he did not leave her side once. Naomi screamed, cried, bit down hard on a leather strap he gave her. And then just before dawn, a baby's cry filled the house. "A girl," Weston said, his voice cracking. "She is perfect." Naomi sobbed, reaching for her daughter with shaking arms. "Rosalie," she whispered. "Her name is Rosalie." Weston wrapped the baby in a towel and placed her in Naomi's arms. Naomi looked up at him, her face flushed and wet with tears. "You saved us," she said. He knelt beside the bed, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "No, you did that yourself. I just made sure you had a place to do it." Naomi's eyes filled again, but this time with something softer, steadier. "You are a good man, Weston Grady." He looked down at the tiny baby in her arms, then back to her. You both can stay, as long as you want. Her hand found his, warm and sure. Then I think we are home. The high plains thawed slow that spring, the snow retreating in wet patches beneath the cottonwoods. Naomi stayed inside most days, swaddled in a quilt Weston's mother had stitched long ago, arms curled around the baby as if nothing else in the world could touch her, and maybe it couldn't. Rosalie nursed strong and fussed little, her cries soft and bird-like in the still house. She had a tuft of hair the color of tree bark and her mother's narrow chin. Weston repaired the front fence and restacked the woodpile without asking for help. He moved quieter now, boots soft on the porch, voice low near the cradle. When Naomi offered to wash their clothes over the fire, he built a bench beside the washing tub so she wouldn't have to stand too long. One afternoon, as the wind bent the tall grass southward and the scent of thawed earth drifted through the open window, Naomi said, "You ever think of building a second room?" Weston paused at the table where he'd been shaping a new yoke pin. "You want one? I was thinking maybe Rosalie might, come time she's walking." He ran his thumb along the edge of the wood, then nodded. "I can start cutting lumber tomorrow." Naomi bent her head, a flush rising on her neck. "I didn't mean to presume." "You didn't," he said gently. "If she's yours, then I reckon she's mine to look after too." Neither of them spoke for a long while after that, but Naomi's hands stilled on the baby's blanket, and her eyes held something warm and uncertain when they met his. That night, the lantern burned low as Naomi rose to tend to Rosalie. Weston stirred from his cot near the stove. "You all right?" he asked. Naomi adjusted the baby against her shoulder. She just needed comfort. Weston sat up slowly, rubbing at his neck. "You want me to take a turn?" She hesitated, then nodded. "You sure?" He crossed the room, arms out. "Let me hold her a while." Rosalie settled easy into his chest, her breath soft against his collar. Weston rocked gently back and forth, his hum barely a sound. Naomi leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed in front of her. "You're good with her." "I didn't know I would be." "You didn't have to try. That's the difference." By morning, Naomi found Weston asleep in the rocker, Rosalie curled against him, both of them still and peaceful. She watched them a long while before setting the kettle on. Later, as Weston fit the crossbeam on the new frame outside, Naomi stepped out with a tin cup of cooled coffee. "You ever think about marrying again?" she asked without looking at him. He adjusted the board, then took the cup. "Not until now." Naomi studied the sky. "I never thought I'd be anywhere safe enough to ask that." He set the cup down, wiped his hands on a rag, and turned to face her fully. "Naomi, I don't know what's ahead for us, but I know I want to be here with you, with her, if you'll have me." She looked at him then, eyes steady and bright. "I think I already do." Weston didn't reach for her. He didn't need to. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of spring blossoms from a distance, and Naomi stepped forward on her own, closing the space between them. Rosalie stirred in her cradle behind them, but didn't cry. The sky above them was wide and clear, and for the first time in a long while, neither of them looked back. Rosalie's first laugh came on a warm June morning, while Weston was fixing the hinge on the smokehouse door. Naomi had been carrying the baby on her hip, showing her the red-winged blackbirds nesting low in the willows, when a breeze caught Naomi's hair and blew it across her face. She puffed it away, and Rosalie let out a startled, breathy laugh that stopped them both. Naomi turned toward the sound, blinking as if she hadn't heard right. Then Weston stepped down from the stoop, wiping his hands on his trousers. "Was that?" She laughed, Naomi said, voice hushed with awe. "She laughed at me." Weston's grin came slow. "Might be she thinks you're funny. Might be she's right." That night, Naomi folded Rosalie's new linen gown by the fire, her stitches steady and small. Weston sat nearby, working a strip of leather into reins, the silence between them companionable. "Did you ever think on what you'd name a child?" Naomi asked. He looked up. "Wasn't something I expected. But if you had," he rubbed his thumb along the leather. "My ma liked the name Caleb, said it sounded like someone who didn't give up easy." Naomi nodded. Rosalie might have been Caleb if she'd come out different. Weston set the reins down, eyes on the fire. "You think you'd want another, one day." She folded the gown in half. "I think, if I did, I'd want it to be here with you." His voice was quiet. "I'd want that too." The next morning, Naomi took Rosalie out to the side yard while Weston saddled the bay mare. Their neighbor, old Thomas Carr, had written about trading seed potatoes, and Weston meant to ride the hour north to settle it. Naomi packed him bread wrapped in cloth, tucked beside a slice of dried apple. "You sure you can manage her while I'm gone?" he asked, adjusting the saddle girth. Naomi kissed Rosalie's cheek. "We'll manage just fine. I'll keep her in the shade and out of the wind." Weston glanced at the sky. "You see clouds gathering, get inside. I've lived through worse than a little weather." He met her eyes, serious. "I know, but you don't have to do that alone anymore." She reached up, fingertips brushing his jaw. "And you don't have to carry everything yourself." He rode out with the sun behind him, and Naomi watched until he disappeared over the ridge. By mid-afternoon, Rosalie had drifted to sleep in the cradle Weston had carved from pine. Naomi took the quiet to move through the cabin, folding linens, dusting the shelves, smoothing the creases from the bed. She paused at the top drawer of the small chest Weston's drawer and opened it with care. Inside lay a photograph, edges worn and curling. A woman and a man stood in front of a log house, arm in arm. Their smiles were faint but real. When Weston returned just before dusk, Naomi was sitting on the porch, Rosalie against her chest, the photograph in her lap. "I should have asked before taking it out," she said, not looking away from the image. Weston stepped up, brushing dust from his sleeves. "You're welcome to anything in that drawer." "She was your mother," he nodded. "And my father." "That was taken in Missouri a year before the fire." Naomi traced the edge of the frame. "They looked content." "They were. They worked hard, fought sometimes, but they stayed. That means something." Naomi looked up at him. "It does." He sat beside her, knees brushing. "You thinking on your folks?" "Not often," she said. "My mother passed when I was young. My father gave me away for a pair of boots." Weston didn't speak, but his hand covered hers, firm and steady. "I used to think I was born wrong," Naomi said. "But now, when Rosalie smiles, I feel something settle in me, like I belong in the world." "You do," she turned, her voice quiet. "I'm not always easy." "I'm not either." They stayed there as the sky turned lavender, the wind soft through the grass. Rosalie stirred, then settled again. Naomi leaned against Weston's shoulder. "I want to marry you, not someday. Now." He tilted his head, surprised but not uncertain. "You sure?" "I've never been more," he smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. "Then we'll talk to the Reverend in town come Sunday." Naomi exhaled long and deep. "My name's going to sound right beside yours." He reached for her hand again, lacing their fingers. "It already does." The Reverend married them beneath the cottonwoods behind the house, a week after the planting was done. Naomi wore a dress stitched from flour sack muslin, the seams neat, the collar high. Weston had shaved awkwardly and combed his hair into something close to tidy. Rosalie dozed in Naomi's arms through the short vows, her tiny bonnet lifting in the wind like a petal. Afterward, they shared bread, wild honey, and goat cheese with the Carrs and the widow Dobbins from down the ridge. The sun was warm on their shoulders, and Naomi leaned into Weston's side when the breeze picked up. No one made a speech. No one needed to. That night, with Rosalie asleep in the cradle, Naomi lit the small oil lamp on the table, her fingers resting on the marriage certificate folded beside it. "You ever think you'd marry out here?" she asked. Weston closed the door behind him, shrugging off his coat. "Didn't think I'd find someone I'd want to share the quiet with." Naomi traced the edge of the paper. "It still feels strange, belonging somewhere." He crossed to her and rested a hand on her shoulder. "You belong here more than anyone." She tilted her head up, catching the look in his eyes. "I want to plant winter squash next season, and cucumbers, if you'd help me build a second garden plot. I'll start clearing the rocks after haying's done." Naomi smiled, slow and certain. "I like making plans with you." That summer brought dry heat, the kind that cracked the ground and curled the edges of the cotton leaves. Weston rose early to lead the horses to water before the sun hardened the soil, and Naomi learned to soak the cloth diapers overnight in the rain barrel so they wouldn't sour in the heat. One afternoon, Weston returned from the Carr homestead with a saddlebag full of letters. The mail rider had dropped them 3 weeks late, delayed by a flash flood down near the North Platte. Most were bills or notices, but one envelope bore Naomi's name in a tight, slanted script she didn't recognize. She opened it on the porch, her jaw tightening as she read. When she lowered the page, Weston was already watching her. "Something wrong," she folded it once, then again. "My husband's brother, he found out I'm alive, says he aims to come up this way and claim what's his." Weston's voice came low. "There's nothing here that belongs to him." Naomi nodded, but her hands trembled. "He's the kind of man who doesn't need the law on his side to take what he wants. I won't let him near you." She looked at him, her mouth a hard line. "I don't want you hurt over me. You're not a burden," he said, voice firm. "You're my wife, and he has no claim on you or this place." She pressed a hand to her middle where fear had settled like a stone. "Then we'll be ready." Weston stood before dawn the next day and rode to town. By dusk, he'd returned with a second rifle, a box of shells, and a letter to be sent by post to the territorial law office. He didn't explain what he'd written, but Naomi could guess. The days passed slow after that, each sunrise measured by the stretch of shade across the yard and the sound of Rosalie's chattering. Weston hung a bell on the porch rail, one Naomi could ring from the garden if he was out of sight. He showed her how to hold the rifle steady, where to stand if someone came from the north trail. "You think he'll come?" she asked one evening, her back to the porch post, eyes on the horizon. "I think we'll be ready if he does." She nodded, then reached for his hand. "I don't want to live in fear." "You won't," he said. "Not here." That night, Naomi lay beside him, her head against his chest, listening to the even beat of his heart. For the first time in days, her breathing slowed. "You built this place with your hands," she said into the dark. "And I'm going to help you protect it." His arm tightened around her waist. "We built it, together." The next morning, the wind shifted. Naomi stepped onto the porch with Rosalie on her hip and saw dust rising on the trail from the east. She handed the baby to Weston without a word, picked up the rifle from the doorway and walked to the edge of the yard. But it wasn't him. It was a wagon, canvas torn, one horse limping. An older couple rode weary and blinking beneath their hats. Refugees from a dry farm farther west, looking for anyone who might trade food for help with the harvest. Naomi lowered the rifle. "We got work and food enough for those willing to earn it." The man nodded, grateful. "That'll do just fine." Weston stepped off the porch with Rosalie in his arms. "We've got space in the barn for now. Come sundown, we'll talk terms." Naomi watched as the wagon creaked forward, dust curling behind it. Her heart settled. Not everyone on a trail was trouble. Some were just looking for a place to begin again. That night, as they watched the fire flicker low, Naomi reached for Weston's hand beneath the table. "Whatever comes," she said, "we hold." He squeezed her fingers. "Always." The barn roof took damage in the August hail. Weston spent 2 days replacing shingles, the air thick with the scent of bruised alfalfa and pine tar. Naomi kept Rosalie shaded beneath the cotton sheets she strung between porch beams, humming tunelessly as she shelled peas into a wooden bowl. The couple they'd taken in, Clara and Will Ransom, had settled into the rhythm of things without complaint. Will turned out to be quiet but able with a scythe, and Clara had a careful touch with Rosalie when Naomi needed both hands in the garden. The arrangement wasn't spoken of much, but it worked. One evening, after the kitchen was swept and the shutters fastened against the wind, Naomi leaned her elbows on the table and watched Weston turn a folded paper in his hands. "You've been holding that all day," she said. He set it down with care. "It's from the district office in Laramie. The lawman there sent word. Your husband's brother was arrested south of Rawlins, caught stealing cattle. They're keeping him under sentence." Naomi's breath left her in a long, slow exhale. "So he won't come. He won't." She sat back, brushing flour from her apron. "I don't know what to feel. He took so much time from me." Weston reached across the table, his fingers warm where they touched hers. "He won't take more." Outside, Clara's laughter rang faint from the barn and Rosalie babbled in answer. Naomi tipped her head toward the sound, a smile flickering. "She started holding on to things," she said. "My apron string, the leg of the table, she's trying to stand. She's got your will." Naomi's eyes softened. "She's got your steadiness." Later, when Rosalie was down and the house gone quiet, Naomi stepped out barefoot into the yard. The moon was low but silver bright, and the dry grass shone pale. Weston followed and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I used to think quiet like this meant something was missing," Naomi said. "Now it feels like something's full." He pressed his cheek to her temple. "I used to fear it would always be me and the wind. Then you came." She turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. "Do you ever miss Missouri?" He shook his head. "I miss what it once was, but not more than what I have now. I want to keep building here, not just roofs and fences. I want to teach Rosalie how to read, maybe start a schoolroom if enough families pass through." Weston cupped her face in his hands. "Then we'll clear the back wall and build you shelves for books. You'll teach her everything you know." She leaned into his touch. "I love you. You've got all of me." They stood there until the wind stilled and the night folded soft around them. By the time the cottonwoods dropped their leaves, Will and Clara had moved east toward the Big Horns, chasing work with a sheep spread. Naomi packed them bread and seed cuttings, and Weston loaded the back of their wagon with cured meat and a spare axle. That winter came early, the snow deep and dry. Naomi used the quiet months to teach Rosalie how to hold a spoon and Weston how to make biscuits that didn't turn to stone. He built her a bookshelf with care, his initials carved small beneath hers in the bottom corner. In the spring, they cleared a patch beyond the garden for a new room. Not for Rosalie, she already had her own, but for the children Naomi hoped would come next. They didn't speak of it every day, but when Weston paused to wipe sweat from his brow, Naomi would bring him water and rest her hand over his, and he'd nod, understanding. By the following autumn, the schoolroom had 6 small desks, salvaged from abandoned homesteads, and a slate board Weston hauled back from Laramie in the wagon. Naomi stitched curtains herself, pale blue to catch the light. One morning, as she swept the floor and Rosalie scribbled in chalk beside her, Weston leaned in the doorway. "You built something here," he said. "We built it." He crossed to her, lifted her hand, and kissed her palm. "I never thought love would look like this. It's better than I ever imagined." That night, after Rosalie was asleep and the fire burned low, Naomi curled against him beneath the quilt. "We're not waiting on anything anymore," she whispered. "No," Weston said, his voice low. "We're living it." They lay quiet then, the only sound the crackle of the fire and the soft breath of their daughter beyond the wall. The wind outside had settled, and the sky above was full of stars, clear and certain as the life they'd made together.